Board meeting is now in session. We actually have two public comments today, so I'm going to call on these folks. The first comment is by Mr. John Smith, and if you'll just come up to the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. My name is John Smith, and I'm a longtime resident of Biltmore Hills and actually played tennis at Biltmore Hills for a long number of years. As a matter of fact, I go back to when the courts at Biltmore Hills were 4 red clay tennis courts. Eventually, the city came in and transitioned those red clay courts to 4 hard courts, and then we had enough interest in tennis at Biltmore Hills that we eventually petitioned the city for 4 more courts, which now gives us 8 courts, which goes back to those 40, 50 years ago. But my main purpose for coming tonight is to actually just say thank you to the board. And we're thanking you first for the fact that we've been coming for the last, some members of the community have been coming for the last 4 or 5 months, and you've listened to us for 4 or 5 months to try to address some of the concerns that we've had for the tennis center complex. So we, right now, what we were concerned about was the limited scope in which the Parks Department had set out for the tennis plans. And so we want to say thank you for listening to us for 4 or 5 months. And then after that, listening to us for all that time, you eventually kind of decided that the concerns we were expressing at least deserved a vote. So we thank you for at least giving us a vote, listening to us and giving us a vote. And then thirdly, last month, along with giving us a vote, you decided that the concerns that we had could go forward to be addressed, and you actually voted in a positive sense to say, let's let the council revisit this issue and at least hear the concerns that we've had to improve the courts of the way we'd like to see them improved. So what we really like to do is thank you again, but also now we need to know what the next steps need to be done in order to go forward to build a center that the community can be proud of and pleased with, and also meet the goals that Parks and Recs have set out. We've kind of been dealing with this for almost about 10 years now, but we're still here to try to be helpful with getting community input into what we'd like to see for it to be a first-rate facility. Finally, I'm confident that when the citizens of Raleigh voted to appropriate almost $8 million to build a tennis center at Biltmore Hills, they trusted that it would be built in terms of a first-rate facility, not a third-rate facility. A third-rate facility would not reflect positively on Parks and Rec and would not show that you're being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars and bond referendum money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Okay.
All right, and next in public comment, Nicole Sullivan.
Good evening. Again, my name is Nicole Sullivan. I want to speak a few minutes on the Biltmore Hills Tennis Project. So as Mr. Smith just said, one of the questions is where do we go after the vote that the board took last month? I think one of the things and the reasons why we continue to raise these concerns is we actually want to see this project happen. And hopefully folks received an email via Ms. Harris that had a couple slide decks. So clearly, we're wanting this to happen. We are investing time and energy in identifying folks who have expertise in areas that we don't to help us kind of think about this project. So one slide deck focused on the tennis center, potential options, landscape improvements, which will need to be needed, and then also the site assessment of stormwater issues. If you look at the topography, if you look where those lower courts are in particular, it's all running downhill. As you put more surface area at the top, we're going to have water issues coming down. So all of that needs to be addressed. And that's probably maybe what's impacting those lower courts. But all of that is to say that the community has put forth some effort to try to figure out how to move the project closer to what we want, what we see, what we envision, what was promised, what was stated, this is what it's going to be when we go out here and get this money and we're going to do these courts, we're going to have this facility, it's going to be comparable to a Millbrook exchange. That's what we would expected. That's what we thought getting all that bond money would help us do, and it seems like our input really has not been considered in the process. I know that there's some focus groups planned. I've gotten a couple emails about that. I think there's some other large meetings planned related to the master plan, but we really want to see a specific meeting about the tennis center. Most of these meetings that we go to are the big picture, it's the whole project, it's the whole plan. They all need to work together, but we clearly have some very specific, immediate concerns because we have funding. We want to see the project go forward, but we don't see the transparency about how that's going to move forward, given our concerns. If there's additional funding that's needed, we've tried to identify places for the stormwater, places for tennis, if that's needed. At this point, based on the budget, it seems like we should have adequate money to address the scope that we're interested in. And so that's why we wanted to send those slide decks and send that information out so that people can look at it and kind of see what we're seeing and where we see that there are opportunities to make that area a destination. If you look at what's happened, and again, I do have some qualms about how master planning gets done in this city in terms of the length of time, getting that input, and making sure that gets into the plans. But as you cost things out, and you don't really envision how the community is changing. If you look at what's around Biltmore Hills, it is not the same as it was even 10 years when this was envisioned. It has completely changed. And so we need to address that in a better way.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. And so that's it for public comment, but I do want to address, Ms. Sullivan referenced it, and I think both of our public comment speakers were asking about next steps. So folks watching on TV may be wondering the same thing. There is a focus group that's going to be happening at Biltmore Hills Community Center on April 6th at 4 p.m. So if you guys want to be able to attend that, that's open to the...
It is not about the tennis facility. It is about the Crosslink property.
Okay. Yep. But there will be some discussion on the tennis facility happening at that, or?
It's not intended to, no.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right. So...
You're crossing two different projects.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. It's not like we don't preclude it. We can't say you can't talk about tennis, right? But this is to master plan the Crosslink property.
Oh, got it.
Two distinctly different projects.
So folks at home disregard. But Stephen, would you be able to address what the steps are that folks that want to get involved in terms of any discussions that might be happening with?
I would suggest you talk to your district councilman. The council did not take any action on Tuesday. So that is beyond, the board moved it to the council. The council took no action. Ian emailed the council today, but my suggestion would be to talk to the district councilman.
Okay. So that's, the response that, unfortunately, this is in council's hands at this point, and not unfortunate if council members are watching, but that's kind of the stage that we're at. Obviously, work kind of comes together at one focus point, and they have a lot of stuff on their hands. But hearing from you guys as a community in Biltmore Hills, obviously the board heard from you guys after a number of months, and we took action after a while. I'm confident that those conversations with council will also result in some response from them. So, all right. Next on the agenda is Raleigh Youth Council. We have both of our Raleigh Youth Council reps here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elsa Weiner, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Raleigh Youth Council.
I'm Miles Frazier. I'm the chair of the Raleigh Youth Council.
For our past community service, on March 11th, we partnered with Specialized Recreation Inclusion Services and the Special Olympics to host buddy basketball at Chavis Park. This event was a combination of shooting skills and a game. At our past meeting on March 9th, we focused on resume building, and in groups we learned how to develop a strong resume through our current volunteer history and activities.
As for our upcoming community service, on March 26th, some of our members will act as ambassadors at the Lions Park Teen Egg Hunt. I believe that's 6 to 8:30. Our job as ambassadors will be to promote RYC and other teen program opportunities that the city has to offer. And a little bit later, on March 28th, we will host an egg hunt. That'll be at J.C. Park, and that's from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. At our past conference, I'm very happy to say that the Team Building and Leadership Conference that we co-hosted with the Fuquay-Varina Teen Council was a huge success. In attendance, we had Rocky Mount, Fayetteville, Cumberland, Hickory, Wilson, Winston-Salem, Salisbury, and Lake Norman for a total of 86 teens and 22 advisors. And speaking of conferences, we are attending the State Youth Council Spring Convention next month in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Thank you. That's all we have.
All right. Any questions for Raleigh Youth Council? Nope. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. All right. Now we have a presentation by Shashin Baker on the community input process for projects.
Good evening. I'm Shashin Baker, Raleigh Parks, and I'm here tonight to talk about Parks capital project process. You probably have heard the acronym CIP quite a bit. It stands for Capital Improvement Program, which is a funding program to support real or physical asset development and improvement. For Raleigh Parks, here are the typical types of CIP projects that we handle. First, planning, system-wide planning, subsystem planning, and the implementation of new park and greenway trails, and major renovation and expansion. And the minor renovation and upgrades are primarily supported by our penny tax revenue. And last, definitely not the least, and the public art program is also supported by CIP for the public art fabrication and implementation. This graphic gives you a very high-level overview of the overall project process from top to bottom. First, before we even have a project, we conduct a preliminary research to check on the strategic plan and comprehensive plan, park system plan, and subsystem plan, and then put budget together. And if a park or a Greenway corridor do not have the land, we go for land acquisition or easement acquisition, and then start with master planning. After master planning, we move on to design, technical design work, and then construction, followed by long-term maintenance. The process here, it looks pretty linear, but in reality it's not. For example, sometimes in Greenway, easement and land acquisition does not happen until after schematic design is confirmed to look at the alignment until the alignment is finalized. So it's pretty complicated process, depending on the projects. And during this overall process, master planning and schematic design, as you all have experienced, are the phases where the public, boards and commission, and council are most heavily involved. And for the public engagement process, there are two primary resources that staff looks at. One is the citywide public participation playbook, and the other one is the public participation policy for park planning. There are a lot of P words in there. Sometimes we call it P5. This is easier. And both these documents are on the city's website, raleighnc.gov. If you want to look for them, you can just look for public participation, and both these documents should show up near the top of your search list. And the public participation playbook on the left, it serves more like a resource and a reference guide, where the policy is an actual adopted policy by City Council. And the policy was jointly developed by staff as well as Parks board members back in 2020. We spent almost a year on it. And both documents reference this spectrum of public participation levels, and depending on the project, the scale and complexity, the intensity of engagement, it varies. It goes from simply inform to consult, involve, collaborate, and to some degree empower. And you have experienced the CAGs, Citizen Advisory Group for some of the bond projects, and the CAG approach falls under collaborate. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more detail about how we carry out these projects. Once we have the budget, we have the project identified. First, before we even start drawing concepts, there's a lot of pre-planning homework that staff needs to do. We develop a project team. In many cases, these are a cross-departmental team to invite a good diverse of expertise and skill sets. And then we conduct situation assessment to understand the social and the physical context of the project, and together understand the scope, budget, and a rough timeline, and sometimes even brainstorm the public engagement process, what that may look like. And one of the critical tasks for this team to do is to hire a consultant. Once the consultant's hired, they become part of this project and project team. And we develop alternative concepts and get take the concepts out to the public, like what you have experienced so far with many of the bond projects. And then further develop schematic design and conduct cost estimate and budget check, and finally take the proposed schematic design to boards and commissions for review and city council for approval. At this point, the schematic design, we utilize a lot of illustrative techniques to help the public understand what the concept or what the final product might look like. So you can see here, there's a rendered plans and perspectives and section diagrams. And if you think of the entire design process as 100%, schematic design only takes about the upfront 20 to 25%. And there's a whole lot more to do after that. So after council approval or board's approval, congratulations, good job. We move into technical design phase. And during the technical design phase, there's still milestone deliverables and reviews with the entire project team to make sure that the intent of the design, after some development, is still consistent with the original approved concept, and also make sure we stay in budget. And at 90% level, roughly, again, 100% is the construction documents, and 90% level, that's where we take the documents and go for permits. And after permit review, concept comments get incorporated and would then develop the 100% construction documents for bidding. I actually brought some examples to show you what 100% documents may look like. The drawing sets are from 2014 Parks Bond Chavis Phase 1 development, and typically construction documents consist of drawings and spec books. I couldn't find the spec books for this one, the hard copy. I only found the aquatic center improvement, which is much smaller. And for Chavis, there are about 2 of these books for Chavis. I'm going to pass them around so you can take a closer look and see what they may. So hopefully these examples will help you understand why schematic design only consists of about 20% of the entire process, and why we cannot get into all the technical details. We cannot finalize all the technical details at schematic design level. It's just a concept to set the directions. Enjoy.
That's the percentages that you're doing. Is that 50 to 70%?
Microphone.
Sorry. The percentages that you're quoting, is that percentages of the time, or percentages of the budget, or percentage of the park
It's,
process?
percentages of the effort.
So
it's not time.
the entire project.
Yeah, the process.
The
It's,
process.
Yeah, if you think how much effort you put in there, the 50% is about midway. Sometimes we would call it design development. It's a good checkpoint. And then 100% will be construction documents like
Yes,
these.
thank you.
Yeah. And as you can see that for these documents, they are, most of them, 99.9%. The drawings are black and white, and they're very technical. They're not pretty like the schematic design drawings. And with the 100% documents, we go out to bid and go through, sometimes for projects over $500,000, we go through council project award and the contract execution. And you probably also heard that for some of the bond projects, we have a construction management at risk coming on board earlier on. But even with that approach, we still need to bid out the subcontractors' work. So there's still major bidding involved. And then the main construction contract will be typically is executed at the end of the bidding process. After we get the contractor on board, go through construction. Towards the end of construction, we obtain certificate of occupancy and substantial completion. At that point, we establish a punch list. And once the punch list items are addressed, and then we go for final completion. After that, here comes my absolute favorite moment, dedication and opening. And during the design phase, the technical design and construction phase, we continue to update the community with the project information. We have each project has most of the major projects do have a project webpage on raleighnc.gov again, and we release newsletters and press releases to update the community, and we provide council updates. Sometimes we reach out to the CAGs, and sometimes people are waiting. We want to let them know, hey, we're still working hard on this one, provide some brief progress update. And for projects under construction, again, major ones, we put construction signage out on the site, and the two graphics on the right, and they're from Lake Wheeler and the Green Road. They're branded signage with the information, and also can direct people to the website where more detailed information is available. And at this point, if not already, you should have this date already on your calendar a week from today. We have this From Bond to Beyond Community Open House. Again, another way of promoting communication with the community to help them understand where we are on the 2022 bond projects. All the 2022 bond projects will be on display. All project managers will be available to facilitate conversations. And lastly, I believe Stephen informed you about a couple months ago when we first developed this reporting dashboard. For the first time, the bond now has its own dedicated reporting dashboard. I don't know if you had a chance to play with it. It's very simple to use. It's only one page, and there are a lot of information here. You can, well, I have this link in this PowerPoint, but if you go to, again, my favorite website, raleighnc.gov, you search for Parks Bond or any Parks Bond project keyword search, you come up with a web page, and this link is close to the top of it, of every page. And you can choose from the upper left corner, you can choose which project you're interested in seeing, and then there's a map to the right to show the location, and also a brief description, and there's a link back to the project website if you want more detailed information regarding, say, which contractor is working on this, and staff contact and everything. And the lower left graphic, it shows the cash flow versus actual spending progress. The blue line here, that's the projected cash flow. And then the green line here shows the actual spending. And the lower right corner, there are 3 speedometers, or you can call them spendometers. And the first one is the actual speedometer for the bond allocated budget. And the middle one is from other ones. You can see there's a lot because Dix Park Conservancy actually contributed a lot for the Gibson Play Plaza. And then the last one is the total. Sorry, Carrie, real quick, this platform, all the information here is fed live from the city's financial system and the project management platform. It's refreshed every day, overnight. So there's no manipulation or anything. It's just whenever we pay invoice, it shows up here. That's spending. Yes, Carrie, sorry.
My apologies, it reflects that I haven't looked at it yet. Is there a place within this that shows at what stage it is at, as in council, board, Parks Department? Does it reflect that part to show who has it, as in approval stage?
Not on this page, but this page does show, as you can see here. Well, actually, I can just go to the link and show you. Say, let's see, which one? Here's the, if you go to Gibson Play Plaza, we're currently in warranty phase. And then, well, there's projected completion, it was already completed. And the speedometers here, it shows the bond funding and conservancy or other funding sources, and then the total. And then this one shows the actual spending. The green line shows the actual spending, and the blue line shows the projected. And another quick, let me see, maybe we go to Aaronsbrook to show you where we are. It shows where we are, we're in design. And the projected completion is early 2028. Again, projected cash flow is the blue, and the green is the actual spending. And if you go to the project website, and the project website tells you exactly where we are. And there's also resource, at the bottom of each project website, there's a resource section. We uploaded the council board presentation and approved the schematic design there for people to view. And at this bond open house, we have the graphics, the most current design and everything, and will be all on display. And there will be food too. Let's see. What do I get? Okay, get out of here. And with that, we're happy to take questions.
Questions? Bob?
I think my problem with some of the pricing and costing is related more to capital improvement projects and the staging, the years that it takes to go through what I would call life cycle of a project. And I don't have a grasp of how we can conceive a project and then design it and get a bond to fund it and actually go to construction and build it when we have the price escalating at about 15% a year. Given that you need to be reasonably honest in your initial estimates, and you find that you go through a bond and you're 3 years down the road at least, and you've got several projects and you've got other projects and you're 5 years, and here it is, your cost of what you estimated earlier, I won't say is double, but it well could be. What kind of estimating construction science do you all collaborate on to cover these kinds of real world things? Because you do the best you can, but then you turn around and you tell neighborhood X, we know you thought you had a project, it was bonded, it was funded, but we ran out of money. And you can't box everything and plan on canceling projects. We've gotten lucky in some neighborhoods where we did. But how do you plan in the future to work with prices that escalate at that rate and still be able to fund everything you put in a CIP program for a bond?
I'll talk about what we have been doing with this batch of bond projects, and maybe Stephen can talk a little bit about future, and the city as a whole did think about how we carry out these projects more effectively. And with the bond projects we have now, as I mentioned, that we have these percentages, you know, at schematic design level, 20%, 25%, or design development, 50%, 90%, we perform cost estimate. And the cost estimate is not just for construction cost. It includes escalation, it includes contingency. Escalation is projected out to construction time on an annual basis. So that's all factored in when we do cost estimate, cost estimation. And another one is that when we have more complex projects, especially larger scale, such as Chavis Aquatic Center, we bring the contractor on board very early on, the construction management at risk, and then they help with constructability check and cost estimate. And for those major projects, we actually have multiple cost estimators. We have the consultant's cost estimator, we have the contractor's cost estimator, and every step of the way, we get two sets and we reconcile both. We get people together, why are you costing it this much, why are you costing it this much, who's got it right, and what are the logics? So that's how we control costs for the projects that we currently have. And for the future?
For this bond, before I talk about the future, when we worked with this board, we were hovering around $150 million for these projects. That's why the cost is $275. So Shasheen's team, even before we went out to the referendum, brought on cost estimators and architects to verify what the council was asking. And then to the midpoint of construction, we projected out escalation. Now, we can't control how inflation goes, but we did build it in. So projects early on were much cheaper, and by the time we got to 2022, that's why the projects ended up totaling $275, whereas before they looked a little bit less expensive.
You know, the answer oftentimes comes up to reduce projects and make them less costly when that's not the good answer. Mm-hmm. So we need to stick with what we needed originally and find ways to fund them.
And the other, to reinforce what Shasheen said, we used to design, permit, and then bid projects. Now we bring on these construction managers, which are large general contractors. So all the way, they're price checking, so there's not this big surprise at the end because you've hired the contractor right in the beginning to advise you. So that will help with the delivery of a lot of our park bond projects. The new thing the council and our finance and budget department have come up with is something you may have heard. It's called steady state. So the intention is for the council to do referendums every 4 years, excuse me, not at a large scale, but they would be multidisciplinary. So parks, housing, and transportation. In between those 4 years, the council will decide what are the projects very early on that we want to do. So we'll use a future Biltmore Hills Tennis Center, right? So they might say, we're going to do that in a couple of years. They're going to say, Parks and Engineering, go hire an engineering firm and a contractor, take it all the way to about 50% design. So when we go out to the referendum, it's 50% design, almost permitted, and we can go right to construction. So that's something new for the city. We're going to do it with roadway projects, parks projects in the future. So there'll be this bucket of money that the council will have to work with the manager on called advanced planning to say 3 years from now we want to build the second phase of something. Go ahead and take it as far as you can with that bucket of money so when the referendum comes around, we can immediately move forward. The other thing is, sorry, I pointed out, the bond referendums every 4 years will not involve a tax increase, that we will build up enough equity within the city that every 4 years we can issue roughly plus or minus $200 million in projects without raising taxes. But the community still votes on the referendum. So but in between that 4 years, we plan, design, and almost get to permitting. So when the referendum, knock on wood, is approved, you go almost right into construction.
So design build contracts are really out, I guess, aren't they?
We are actually moving in that direction as well. The city, Raleigh has not done that on a regular basis. I believe stormwater is the only division, or maybe Raleigh Water. There's very limited basis. Other municipalities capitalize on that. You have the architect on board. Yes, and it shrinks the time. Like
So I don't know what that is, design build.
You are bringing on your architect or we'll say your designer and your contractor, and you start the project, and along the way you problem solve, but you are fast tracking the project. So you don't wait till the designs are 100% complete. Let's say when the site package is done, you start the site work, but you're paralleling doing the vertical design while the site work is being done. So it does multiple things all at one time instead of doing it on this long sequence. So really tightens up the time frame, and a lot of projects are more efficient and cost effective.
All right. Other questions? Ian?
This might be a Helene question, but with the penny tax, does that allow you to front load? Like, I know a lot of the master plans come through with like, here's the priority tier and here's if we have budget available. Like, is there budget allowance in the city council to say, we will use next year's penny tax revenues this year with a loan or something like that?
That is only used for maintenance.
Okay.
So roof repairs, fence repairs, boardwalks, and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Kate?
Well, one about the bond, the steady state bonds that you were just talking about. I think I heard that the city is thinking about doing some new bonds maybe for affordable housing. Will that be that same model?
Yes, that is a similar, that is the concept we are using. At the council is now considering a bond this fiscal year, 26. It would be for plus or minus around 200 million. It's like 100 million for housing, 100 million for transportation, and there would be no tax increase.
Okay. And and why doesn't Raleigh do design build?
I've been here 20 years. I think a lot of it came with like who was in the leadership positions, not manager, but like who led construction for the city. They might have been risk averse. Also, the market might not have been there. There might have only been a couple of them. But now that you see construction everywhere, like every type of construction is on the table for us. So I think it's a combination of tradition and just maybe not having those tools like as a policy in the city.
And
And then
also
I
to add to that, Kate, design build has not always been available to municipalities in North Carolina. I believe it was approved by the legislature like 2013 or 14
Yeah,
or
so
something.
legally
so
we
it's
could
a
not
new
do it either.
thing, and
Yeah,
then each city would need to develop a policy to start using it. So it's a fairly new thing.
And I have one more question, if I could. So when the project is under construction, is it staff who is going out there and making sure that it's being constructed in the way that you want it to be, or how does that happen?
It's a combination of staff and consultant, sometimes we'll hire a third-party testing company as well to make sure that all the materials and all the operation, the installation, they are done to specifications.
Thank you.
All right. Doug? Microphone.
With the tree thing in mind that we had such great success with, I observed in here a number of pages on planting, which suggests that your question of design build and your question about what are these people thinking about and what are some of the things that are highlighted in there, making judgments. And the space is there, so we've just got to keep pushing those trees to find a home where they might best suit.
The beauty is of the work of Leaf Out, it is now going to be looked at even a more thorough lens related to, hey, that is not a native species, or that is historically invasive. You cannot use that. Whereas before, it was like an individual basis. Like we would have teams now, policy-wise, not only parks, but every department in the city is going to have to follow the work of Leaf Out. So.
Other questions?
I want to piggyback on Ian's. I think this was going to be at our retreat. We were going to talk about how the guide he's creating kind of matches up with this process, like where the community and the board is most informed and the options for feedback. So this isn't like the one time. That was the third item that I couldn't remember.
This might be on the silly side of questions, but does the Parks Department ever encourage time capsules from the local community?
I'll let Stephen answer.
I am only aware of one, and it's in Nash Square.
Okay.
Yep.
Are they open to?
I think the last time we opened one, it was full of water and everything was rotted.
Okay.
Yeah. Troy reminded me of that. Yeah.
It was good water. All right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Shashin. Sure. Yeah, and as Stephen mentioned, Ian had brought up the issue of kind of coming up with kind of a board-designed and board-facing guide for us to look at projects, and so it's going to dovetail with what Shashin just talked about. And really the intent there is just so that when we're reviewing projects every month, we know a little bit more about, you know, the terminology that's being used, what questions are valid, what questions maybe are better down the road, and how we can best get involved at different stages. And I think that'll kind of just optimize our ability as a board to really kind of have our feedback heard and get community feedback injected into the process. So, all right. Next up, we have Lauren Cabrich with the Forestville Road Park Master Plan. Lauren?
All right. Good evening, Parks Board. I know we just really got into the weeds with some of the technical aspects, so we're going to get energy up and look at some fun master planning, so the very beginning of the process that Shawsheen was just describing, specifically for the future of Forestville Road Park. This is a really unique master plan for us, both because it's a very unique piece of property that has a lot of beautiful natural resources and also has a very unique history to it. But it also is the first master plan in a while that has been done entirely in-house by the Parks Department. So I want to give a shout out to the Parks Planning team and to Kimberly Saran as well, who acted as our landscape architect on this project. We were able to complete this master planning process in 9 months because of that, and I think we've come up with something really cool, so we're excited to share it with you today. So at a high level, we're going to do some introduction to the project, give you some context about the site itself and the community engagement approach we had for this project. We'll talk about the master plan, including the design goals that helped inform what we created, look at the concept plan together, and some precedent images that show some of those specific elements and amenities that we're including, and then talk about what comes next for this project before it gets into the litany of other phases that Shawsheen just outlined for us. And today, we very excitingly have 3 special guest speakers with us. We've got 3 members of the Community Advisory Group who helped us create and were really instrumental partners in creating the master plan for Forestville Road Park. We've got Andrew Stevenson, Michaela Posey, and Roger Montague. So first up, I'm going to pass it to Andrew to give you guys a little bit of background about the site.
Hi, everybody. My name's Andrew Stevenson. I live in the Bryson Village subdivision, which is very close to where this is going to be built. The property itself is about 25 acres in northeast Raleigh, District B. It's near the intersection of Buffalo Road and Forestville Road, which traffic is terrible, but there's a lot of growth in this area. Let's see. Near the park, there's you have the. Let me go back again. You have the Buffalo Road Aquatic Center, which is about 2 miles down Buffalo Road, 2-3 miles. You have the Horseshoe Farm Nature Preserve, which is about 4 miles away, and you have the Neuse River Greenway, which is 1.5 mile, but you can't really get to it on foot from this area because of the 540 and Neuse River and no sidewalks and all that mess. As you can see in the this graphic here, each of these areas highlighted in pink are current development going on around this area. There's a total of about 1,800 new residential units being built, either currently in development or in the planning phase, permitting, something like that. There's a ton of people coming to this area. I live in the Bryson Village subdivision, which is just south of the map over here. I am super excited about being able to actually walk to some place that's not just a Publix. It's great that we have that. The area is starting to give you more of a destination to walk to. I've lived in there about 9 years so far. And the area that's highlighted in yellow is the park. I've actually spotted that when I first was buying house in the area, and I saw that this was a possibility. It was actually a selling point for me. Let's see. We're talking apartments, single-family homes with ADUs, townhouses, a whole bunch of different housing situations over here. And having a park that close is going to be absolutely fantastic whenever this happens. Let's see. None of the neighborhoods around here, other than Bryson Village, seem to have a playground. So having some resource for kids to go to is also fantastic because these little play structures in neighborhoods are never all that satisfying as a kid. They're done with it in 10 minutes and they want to move on. But I think that's what I have for my part here.
Hi, good evening. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Michaela Posey, and I'm another member on the CAG board here. Wanted to start off, I also happen to live in Bryson Village, but more importantly, I think that I serve in a unique role I'm also a project manager for a large scale EPC, not in North Carolina, but have background in construction and love that piece of it and love the community piece. I'm a mother. And we moved to Bryson Village's area about 2 years ago after wanting to live in Raleigh pretty much our whole lives. So community is a big piece of it here, along with this park. So in terms of the timeline and how this park is coming together is the first part was the initial input, which is the fun part. That's all of where you get to dream big. You have your children, draw what they imagine the parks to look like. You get all the different pieces of when you go to different parks, I wish it had this, I wish it had this, and you don't think about budget or anything like that. So you get to put all the ideas from different community members. Our board got to dream very big here. From that, we moved into the second phase, which is when reality hits. And where we created 3 different alternative concepts for the park development that were prepared, which showed the different levels of the development intensity and various combinations of amenities. So from that, we developed phase 3, which was the concept plan. And there we created a single concept plan based off of all those factors, all the different community inputs, different conversations that as a group we've had from different surveys, those different pieces. And we finally had one design that was starting to make sense, which leads us to the fourth part of the timeline, which is where the planning process is summarized into a report, which outlines the designing intent for the future park. And we're now in the master park adoption phase. Although I know you guys heard a lot about the phase, all this whole process a little bit ago, less in depth. Like I touched on, community engagement. This is one that for me is a huge point. It's one of the many reasons why we love Raleigh is exactly because of this part right here. Even coming down to the parks, you have input. I'm the kind of mom that you'll see at just about every event, City of Raleigh event or not. But just to be able to be involved in the community and to have a say, because as you know, people are constantly moving, and a point is, it's nice to, when all this development and new stuff is coming around, to be able to have a say and to, one day, talk about the park with your kids, the house you pass down or move around to, get to take, grandkids to the park that you had a say in, I think is such a unique thing that I wish more people got to experience, and I love that this was a part of the plan here. So with community engagement, there was many ways that this went about. First was the community advisory groups working meetings, which were a pleasure to have, along with 3 public meetings, 3 online surveys, a site visit, and lots of flyers and yard signs, and lots of social media posts, whether it's in neighborhood Facebook groups that everyone has, or other versions online. So from these, we got lots of feedback, whether it be from local neighborhoods that are in the area, other groups, upcoming development, everyone that's kind of moving to this area because it is such a hot spot. So we were able to engage with the community in many ways. And we had over 450 direct participants in the planning process, which is awesome. I will pass it back off.
Is my part here? Keep going?
Either side.
Right here, okay. Oh, he's got them individually. That's cool. My name is Roger Montague. I am the great-great-grandson of Kearney Upchurch, who established the plantation, which the Forestville Road property is a part of. Okay? I grew up on the property. My grandfather was the last person that farmed that particular property. My mother inherited the Forestville Road Park property as her part of her inheritance. We have Kearney Upchurch also has a connection with Dix Park, and you probably would never guess that. His great-great-great-grandson my son, was the artist in residence at Dix Park for 2025, Preston Montague. My wife grew up on the property, and we were married in the chapel there 55 years ago. 55 long years ago. Anyway, it is what I wanted to cover today, mainly from a conceptual standpoint, is the fact that that piece of property is extremely unique, extremely unique. I doubt there's another piece of property in Wake County that has the history and the natural resources on it that that property has. But back to why I was assigned here. As you know, we put together a master plan. And by the way, being a member of the community advisory group was an absolute pleasure. I got to meet Ian and my good buddy here, Bob, and I shared lots of good times. Some maybe we can explain to you sometime. And working with the park staff was absolutely great. They did a great job. All of the community involvement that was mentioned was backed up by the work of that staff. They did a great job, and I'm very pleased to be a part of it. Again, I grew up on the property. Back when I grew up, if you've been out to the property, the bridge across Neuse River was a one-lane bridge. It was a plank bridge. And we played in Forestville Road. I mean, maybe 3 cars a day went by. And now it's 3 cars every second. But anyway, back to this master plan. We established some design goals. You can see here on the screen was to honor history, foster community, conserve nature, and inspire play. As I mentioned, there's a great deal of history involved in, I'm sorry, I have to walk when I speak. I can't stand in front of this thing. A great deal of history, okay? A lot of it documented, which makes it special. If you've been to the North Carolina archives, the minutes of the Wake Crossroads Baptist Church are there that go back to 1789. And a lot of the history of that piece of property are included in those minutes because Kearney Up Church, my grandfather were mentioned in there numerous times. So there's a great deal of documented history. As far as documentation, I was able to give donate, I think 5 or 6 I've lost the word. Deeds, there you go. I'm 80, forgive me. 5 or 6 deeds, one that goes back to 1836. So again, there's lots of documentation there. And we want to honor what occurred on that property. You notice in the first page of this document, this buzzer won't go off, will it? On the first page, you noticed a log cabin. That was found on the property by my father in the early 60s, and he actually reconstructed it all by himself. So we hope to use that, or parts of it, to tell the history of that particular piece of property. Fostering community is actually is another design goal, and certainly an important one. We want the Forestville Road Park to be a place where people can gather, feel safe, talk with, interact with people from everywhere, any place, and enjoy the volunteering, enjoy interacting with each other. One of the things that makes it important to me is the natural resources that are on that piece of property. 2 things. There are trees there and that probably are close to 200 years old. And again, finding another piece of property in Wake County that you have that. I played under those pecan trees, and I call them pecans, as a little kid, and they looked humongous to me at that point. Some of them maybe have a diameter of 4 or 5 feet now. So you can't find that. There's lots of forest resources out there that may be biologically unique. Being that age, they're not hybridized. They may be some unique stuff out there. So I hope we'll have and hope we will do a better, an increased inventory, or enhanced inventory of what's out there, and actually protect them. Also, we want to make sure that, the other natural resource aspect of that is the stream that bisects the piece of property. The entire watershed of that stream is under development or developed. The entire watershed. So we've got to do a good job of controlling the stormwater runoff and the water quality that's in that stream, or we will not be able to do what we wanted to do in our fourth design goal, which was to inspire play. I played in that creek for, I don't know, all my growing up period of time, from 1946 to, well, not 46, but to 1969 when I left. And we want the place to be a place that park goers can play and enjoy themselves. And if we don't protect it, especially the forest resources and that stream, we won't be able to do that. So I encourage you to certainly require that in the decisions that you make. And by the way, having grown up there and been on every square inch of it, I'll be more than happy to go out and visit the site with any of you as individuals or as a group and talk to you about the history. I'm now trying to find the location of the cotton gin that was on the property. So anybody that wants to go out and take a look at it, I'll be glad to take you on a tour. And remember, I'm 80, so we've got to get on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mondeke.
I expect to walk those trails, okay? Can we agree to that?
I may want to suggest to Lauren that these speakers are so good, you may want to carry them forward to other projects in the future.
Yes. Could we get a round of applause for our CAG members? As you can see, we've had a wonderful, very passionate group of folks that have helped support this project thus far, and we're super grateful for all of their knowledge and input and even donations. If you guys check out the online archives of the Historic Resources Program, you can see those deeds that Roger mentioned that are now part of our collections, which is really cool. So let's talk about the park itself, the design that we came up with. We've really gotten this hyped up for you guys. So I'll highlight some important pieces of it here. So obviously there's a lot of things to consider with this particular park, both in terms of the resources that we have on site and the history of the site, as well as knowing that there is a true deep need for recreational resources in this area of the city. So what we've come up with, we think, is a really well-balanced approach that kind of has areas that are dedicated to all of these things. So on the east side of the park, we've kind of have the stream as a natural delineator of this site. On the east side of the park, that's very much our passive space, pretty low touch. It has trails through it, a mixture of paved trails and natural surface trails, so folks can get both of those experiences with small pockets of amenity areas throughout, so places to sit, have a moment of respite, have a picnic, spend time with folks. And then as you move to the west side of the property, the west side of the stream, this is where we have consolidated some of our more active uses within the park space. So we have a large play area. We're calling it our adventure play area. We very much intend for this to be a naturals material forested theme, like you're experiencing play within a tree house within this wonderful, very wooded site. We also have a pollinator meadow. So the one cleared area that you see here is the area where we don't have a lot of old growth trees, converting that into a pollinator meadow with another amenity area so you can really sit and be immersed in that. We've also put in a multi-sport court with the exact uses for that court to be determined as we move into further engagement with schematic design. And then finally, in the top left-hand corner here, we've got our historic gathering area. So as Roger mentioned and alluded to, there's a breadth of history throughout the site, spanning back to its indigenous uses. There's been a lot of arrowheads found on the site, moving through its antebellum and then plantation era history, through its Wake County agrarian history to today. And so this area is where we've got those historic pecan trees that Roger mentioned. So preserving that whole area and having a dedicated historical gathering area to really be a memorial and allow people to learn about the history of the site, learn about the experiences that folks had on this land, pay homage to the resilience and strength of folks that were enslaved on this land, which we do have historical record of. And all of that will be grounded by an art piece that is using repurposed materials from the cabin that was located on the site. And so this will kind of be a gathering and jumping off point, then move through the site and have an experience seeing historic interpretation as you move throughout the site. So a lot of really cool stuff packed into this space, and to give some precedent images just to kind of give you some of the tone of the things that we're looking at. Again, that mixture of paved trails and natural surface trails, which were all intentionally designed in loop configurations because we know folks love a loop trail. They love to be able to count the number of laps that they're going. We've got that adventure playground, that adventure play area, again, really emphasizing those natural materials and feeling that immersion in nature. Something that I did not mention, we also, of course, have a restroom building and picnic shelter co-located here with the play area, with a kind of terraced plaza designed around this space because of the amount of grade change that we have. So the photo here is of Hill Street Park, if it looks familiar to anyone. So this type of concept, so folks can sit, look out over the site, see the stream, see folks playing on the playground, and then, of course, the multi-sport court as well. Now, when we're talking about those cultural and natural resources, again, some precedent imagery. We've got what we're calling the picnic grove, which will be interspersed throughout that pecan grove so people can really experience how majestic those old growth trees are. Our historic gathering area that I mentioned, a place to kind of have some respite and reflection. Of course, we're thinking about sustainability throughout the site, so integrating green stormwater infrastructure. As has been mentioned in this presentation, with all of the development in this area, we want to be very conscious of preserving the water resources that we have and protecting the stream that's on site. Pollinator Meadow is another great example of that intentional sustainability. And then, like I mentioned, educational signage throughout the site and interpretive art with the cabin. So, what's next, you might be wondering? We've got our city council presentation coming up next month, where this master plan will formally be adopted. And from there, in keeping with the information that Shashin shared with you all earlier, we'll be moving into schematic design. We anticipate that starting in earnest in early 2027. And then those later stages, that advanced design, permitting, construction, is to be determined based on funding, identification, and availability. But something that I will mention, we do have $600,000 available to us through a development agreement from one of these adjacent developers to the park. Our team was able to negotiate during the rezoning process and secure funding to help support the development of this park site. So we will be using that fund to stabilize the site, both to stabilize the cabin, do some interim stormwater mitigation and erosion control, and then use the rest of the fund to advance our project through that schematic design to get as far along in that construction drawing process as we can, so that when funding is available, we'll be able to hit the ground running. So, I know we've given you all a lot of information today. The recommendation before you all is to approve the master plan for Forestville Road Park and forward a recommendation of approval to City Council. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. Questions for Lauren? Doug?
Will you be able to keep the team you've developed together for the schematic design to work on some details?
Yes, so that we'll have to see exactly how that fits into our greater capital projects team workload. Most likely we'll bring in a consultant team to help us with some of those more advanced engineering drawings just due to capacity. But yes, the team that has been involved thus far, we all feel very passionately about this particular park and master plan, and so we'll continue to stay closely involved, as will our community members. They're all very excited for this park to come in the future as well.
All right. Other questions? Kate?
I have two. One, I may be taking Linda's. I wondered what level of natural heritage inventory has been done on the property.
Yes, that's a great question. There certainly will be more inventories to be done as we advance in the design. But there's been several things done to date. We have done a comprehensive survey of the site with a full tree survey. There's well over, 1,400 trees on this site. And we've also done some preliminary work with our historic resources team, as well as the North Carolina, I'm going to mess up the acronym, NC Heritage Program. There we go. For this site as well. And then back in 2011, an archaeological study was also done for this property. So we have a good indication of key areas within the site that warrant further investigation as to resources that might be present. So. And we did a pre-development assessment plan. We love doing plans. That's our whole job.
And Linda Pearsall may have ideas about this too, but one thing that hit me is I think that Wake County has a team. It's actually like George Hess. Well, he's retired now with NC State, but they're like there's a group of people who come together. They choose a site every year and they do natural heritage inventories. So that might be a resource for you. You might have thought about that already.
Yeah, we've definitely done bio blitzes on other properties, including Neuse River Park. I think is one of the most recent ones we've done, and that's always a really great time and really valuable. So certainly something on the table.
And then I just had a quick question. How do you make a decision about whether a trail should be paved?
That is a great question. It is very much driven by the community engagement that's done. It's something that we spent a lot of time talking about, both as a community advisory group and in the different public meetings and online surveys that we had. And that's kind of how we ended up with the plan that's before you all today, where we've got a mixture of those trails, because we had some folks who were really invested in wanting that really immersive natural experience where they have purely natural surface trails, but then we also had folks, and we know that there's a ton of families coming into this area, folks with strollers, older folks who maybe would benefit from a paved trail and having more even surface. And so, yeah, that ultimately is what drives pretty much every design decision we do, what we hear from the community. And in this case, really split perspectives, and so we kind of combined the best of both worlds.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions?
Yeah.
Linda?
I have two comments. One, going back to Kate's question, I was able to go on one of the site visits to the property with park staff, and I was really impressed by the knowledge that park staff brought in terms of what was on the ground and their appreciation and concern to make sure the important things were protected. My other comment goes to the pecan grove. Finding a balance between allowing public access and loving those trees to death and the density and the construction process and not sacrificing those trees is going to be a challenge.
Yes.
And I hope you guys pay careful attention to that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you all heard from Roger today. He will make sure that we are on top of that. And it's something that's very important to, again, telling that kind of natural and cultural history of the site. And so that's why we kind of purposely have that northeast or northwest corner of the property carved out in that way. And we're so glad you're able to join us on the site visit. I do want to give a shout out to and acknowledge Sean Goff, our land stewardship manager. He was able to join us, and he's, obviously such a wonderful resource within our department.
All right. Steve?
First of all, I mean, I've said this to you before, but this is an exceptional example of talent within the park staff. I mean, it's just amazing. So and the question goes back to what we just heard in terms of doing things a little differently. I mean, is this an example of how we sort of pre-plan so that when we get to the point where we're looking for funding, we have a much better idea of what we're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Steve, it is. And this was opportunistic with a private developer donating $600,000. We probably wouldn't have had funding to do that. We really have bond money and then that maintenance money.
Right.
So this kind of fell into our lap, and we'll take it as far as we can, knock on wood. When the opportunity presents itself, we can point to it to say, hey, this is already in design. We have a solid cost estimate, so we don't wait to do it. And so it's like a small example of this new way in which the city would do it, but we would be doing it on a much larger scale for road projects and other park projects and so forth.
That's great. So I think that's, you know, I often talk about things we should be bragging about. This is right up there on the top of the list.
Other questions, Ian?
Just a comment. As well, this is a awesome and, you know, a neighborhood destination park. I think a subtle thing that was on the map and didn't get called out was that this is going to be an anchor for Greenway, because as it was pointed out, there is no real way to walk to the Neuse River Trail, but if you see that arrow pointing out of the top by the stream, that kind of sets the flag for a future Greenway route to the Neuse River Trail, which is going to be very valuable for the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for pointing that out, Ian. It's almost as though you were on our community advisory group.
I might have listened to it.
Yes, I did not mention that, and that is very important, knowing that this is a neighborhood scale park and that it's growing rapidly and we have so many folks living around it. You see all of these arrows around the edges. We were intentional about including pedestrian connections to all of these residential developments that are either currently or soon to be surrounding the park. And as Ian mentioned, we are designating a new small Greenway corridor segment that will allow this park to connect into our greater Greenway network plans to, again, further enhance that accessibility and pedestrian connectivity.
Great. Doug?
I'd like to, I'd like to mention two other ways that I think this is really an advance over what we've been doing. And a large part of it appears to be the money. And I hope we can think about how that evolved as we think about the roles of our frog group and other stakeholders to maybe think about that as their special contribution and really focus that money, not spreading it around, but we can talk about that later. The other thing are the, nobody will be surprised to hear me say this, adjacent properties where you're going to connect them physically. There's a great opportunity for visual connections too, especially if our tree program becomes the genesis of habitat and natural beauty objectives.
Right. Any other questions for Lauren? All right. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate your time. And as Lauren mentioned, the ask is for us to recommend approving the master plan and sending it to council. So is there a motion? All right. Doug moves. There's a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thank you, Lauren. Great job.
Thank you guys so
And
much.
great job to the CAG. Yeah, absolutely. Come on up, Mr. Montague.
You mentioned, I spent 40 long years working with the federal government. I cannot tell you how many of these meetings that I have been to, both sitting where you're sitting and as staff. And I'd like to say that working with staff was an absolute pleasure. Every meeting we had was well conducted, great information provided to us, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had been to so many, I thought, God, I can't stand another one of these. But it was actually fun, and especially dealing with Bob. But you should have every right to feel very, very proud of the staff, and they have every right to feel proud of themselves.
Thank you. You do. All right, next up is approval of the meeting minutes from last month. Is there a motion?
I think they're going to come in April. I don't see them attached.
They weren't uploaded. Okay, so we'll skip over that. for now.
Giovanna, she put a note in to remind us that they'll come in April.
Got it. Okay. That brings us to the director's report.
Yes, my top 10 items. The first meeting in March. This project at Walnut Creek Wetland Center has been going on for a number of years. It's called the Bailey Drive Gateway. So Rochester Heights, historic neighborhood, has historically had to either get in a car or walk around the park to get in the park. Through private donations in partnership with the Conservation Fund and grant money we receive from the National Park Service, we are going to deliver a new pavilion, a piece of public art, and a connection to the school and the neighborhood. So kudos to our partnership with the Conservation Fund and the Transportation Department, who is contributing money. That bid was awarded. Congratulations to everybody here in your work with Leaf Out. I'll let Kate report out on that. I will be seeking guidance from the manager on what to do next with Biltmore Hills. I just don't have an answer. I always say, talk to your council member, but usually the manager will give us feedback on how we'll work with her team and the council. They just took no action, but I'm waiting for feedback from the manager and the council on that. So let's see. We have officially kicked off the public engagement related to the project Ken brought you related to Fletcher Park and the Wake County Public School System. So we'll go to the Hillsborough CAC next week, and then we'll have a public meeting in April 1st at JC Park. So I'll have Giovanna email that to you. We hosted a really interesting and fruitful conference. There is a conference through NC State called Leadership, which focuses on females in the parks and recreation profession. So we hosted approximately 150 females from all across North Carolina. We have motivational speakers. We have different skills and knowledge work sessions with them. So it looks like people were so happy that it was in Raleigh and they liked it so much. I think we're going to be hosting it more. Interestingly enough, it's led by a former employee of ours who is a professor and a speaker at UNC. We had the 37th annual Black History Month program with Miss Octavia Rainey at Tarboro Road on February 21st. Over 100 people attended. I was one of the speakers along with Congresswoman Ross, so a big lineup of speakers. I bring that up because Miss Rainey honored our staff who has hosted it and contributed it for 37 years. This is something, when I read the input from my staff, we have started an adapted archery program through our specialized recreation services, which is really amazing to provide those experiences. And then it is rowing season, Bob's favorite time of year. So we will send you dates, times, and locations for the Lake Wheeler Open and the ACC Championships and give you all parking passes so you can enjoy going out. If you have not been before, it is really a unique experience. And the link on the file, there is a YouTube video. We did a prescribed burn a few weeks ago at Annie Louise. So we videoed that with our drone. You have the Parks Bond and Beyond in front of you, which is next Thursday. And we are partnering with Transportation for a Pedal to Parks campaign for Bike Month next month. And last but not least, there's a link in there for you all to vote on. The #1 park, so USA Today has #1 park and #1 playground, and Dick's Park has been nominated. So I encourage you to go in and vote often. And the final is the days for your board retreat are afternoon of the 29th and the morning of the 30th. I believe, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, talk about work plan. I can share the budget that the manager had shared with the council approximately the week before, and then to go over the document that Ian has been working on how the board can be engaged on that timeline of projects.
Is that May or June?
May 29th of the afternoon and the morning of May 30th.
At Biltmore Hills? At
Biltmore Hills, yep. And we're going to host a walk on Saturday with community members. Hopefully we'll have some more feedback by then. Interestingly enough, Sir Chair, the manager just set her retreat the same day, so I might have someone stand in for me on Friday. So, and that's all I have to report.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Questions for Stephen? Oh, go ahead, Kate.
Maybe this is a good time to say it. Obviously, it's the city manager who will interpret what happened with the Biltmore Hills at the city council meeting. I had it in my mind that there was a request really that you would come and speak to them at a future meeting to tell them more. That was how I heard it, but who knows?
Yeah, so the manager after the council meeting says, here are your follow-ups. She's like, let me work with you on the follow-up. So I just don't know what it is. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Branch said the council needs more information, but I didn't get any direction yet. But I will soon.
Okay. Awesome. Linda?
Can you talk a little bit about what City Council did with the recommendation we sent for supporting the Leaf Out program?
Yes, they officially endorsed your resolution, which basically means city manager, take this into account when you are developing your budget. That's about as broad as I could. Now, I keep on pointing where Doug is because that's where the manager sits. So she will work. My experience is she works with council members on their priorities, usually in April. Like this is the go time. I submitted my information like in January. I will just invite you all to keep in communications with your council members on the status of that request.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Stephen. All right. Next up, committee reports. Carrie and Bob, do you guys have a Parks Committee report?
I think we just had a fantastic readout of the park that we all voted on. So that was the summation of what we talked about.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know you guys do a great job as a committee to kind of give guidance to CAG members. And it seems like we had a really great CAG group that came tonight.
I think they are patient with us, asking lots of questions to allow for some give and take, which is always appreciated.
Awesome.
I think we drilled down pretty well into that, and I probably misdirected it a bit by trying to look at opportunities and alternatives to see that this thing doesn't go in a drawer somewhere and that it moves forward. I understand from Ian and others that there was a decision not to do it piecemeal, but there may be some need to do step by step, and some things we can get, some things we can't. But we did take a thorough look at it, and I think it should move forward, and I don't know how the funding's going to work out at this point. We don't know where a lot of the funding is. So there are alternatives that will need some management along the way, and we'll probably see that again. Thank you.
All right. No Fletcher report. Greenway's committee report is actually in the agenda, so if that's publicly available. I'm not going to read through it here. Sustainability, Wildlife, and Urban Trees Committee report. Kate?
Sure. I can give a brief overview of what happened at the meeting, if that's at the city council meeting. And I have these Trees Make Raleigh Cool stickers to share with those of you who weren't able to be there. Cooler, because it's already very cool. Oops, I don't think you have one.
I think you need a couple on those laptops right there.
So we didn't have a meeting in March. The SWAT committee meeting didn't happen. We just didn't have one in March, but the city council meeting, I was very, very pleased with what happened. Just to give a brief overview, a lot of the nonprofits and actually other people, like I know Linda invited neighbors and whatever, there were a lot of people who turned out to be there to hear the Leaf Out report because of the outreach that went on. And that's how these stickers came about, because somebody came up with that idea. And people were asked to wear green. And during the public comment period, if you went on YouTube to listen, she was the sixth speaker, I think. Her name is Claude Albastian. She's a former member of the Parks Board and somebody who's been real excited about the 24,000 trees. She just spoke briefly about her support for it, and also to make sure that the city council understood that not everyone there was only celebrating St. Patrick's Day. They were also there for trees, and she had people stand up, and it felt like there were like 40 people there. It was a lot of people. It was great. And then Charles did a great job, along with Zach Manor, in presenting the Leaf Out program. And then what happened is that the city council just jumped in and had a ton of questions. And Chris had very kindly invited me to be the speaker for the Parks Board because we had passed the resolution. And actually I had decided what I was going to say, but they had all these questions so that when I started, it was like, I have to ad lib here because you've already covered a lot of the things that I was. But what happened, the core of what happened, as Stephen has just said, is that the city council just voted to take our resolution and adopt it themselves, which I also interpreted to be telling the city manager that they all really care about this. And there were two other things that happened. One was that Councilor Patton talked about wanting to be ready to go so that we don't lose a planting season. And so she asked if it was possible for the staff to start thinking about an RFP that might go out to partnering nonprofits with where they could just drop the money in, whatever amount of money is put in the budget. And then the other thing I think was within Leaf Out, there are 6 focus areas. 7, I meant 7. And the 6th one is one that, I hadn't really thought about this, but I thought that Megan said something really creative and really thoughtful. That's described, I forget exactly how it's described, but it's sort of to really help strengthen community partnerships and relationships with nonprofits on the issue of trees and natural resource protection. And I think it's been envisioned as like, could we set up something for environmental protection similar to, say, what the Arts Council does with funding? And what Megan Patton said about that is she really likes that idea, but she feels like if we concentrated first on the 24,000 trees, which is item number 7, and then in the future develop out that 6, then those were really the substantive comments that I remember coming. So it was very, very positive. It really felt great. And I don't know, some other people were there too, so if you have any comments about it, but thanks.
All right. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, that was really awesome that we got that support. And I think it's not surprising that we got it since that's such a meaningful plan to do for the city. Okay. Committee reports. Arts Commission is meeting next week, but as a reminder, Steve is our new liaison to that group, and he's excited by all accounts to attend and meet the group. Yep. Yeah. And BPAC, Bob is still the liaison. Bob, do you have a report?
The bicycle pedestrian did not meet. It was council for weather.
Okay. Dick's, the report is also in the agenda, same with historic resources. So I'm going to skip over those.
Chris?
Yes.
I have a question about Dick's.
Yeah.
From the agenda, I noted that the MOU is being revised between parks, and about a year ago, I think it was a year ago, there were conversations about tree protection at parks, and I was hoping that somehow the reworking of the MOU can address incorporating tree protection.
It will not, but actually the Leaf Out program will. So we're creating a guide within the city on city-owned property and city-owned projects to strengthen. The other is when we do have festivals and events is to work in more strongly into the permitting process, the no-go and those type of things. The MOU with the Conservancy is really like nuts and bolts on what we will do and they will not do.
All right.
Yeah.
So I guess I just was concerned that festival season is approaching, and I don't know if there are any protections in place if the leaf out policy isn't developed yet.
Yeah, I don't know if we will have the leaf. I would have to ask Charles and Zach to see what that time frame is. But we do know, based off of what happened in 2025, specifically with Dreamville, which we don't know if they're coming this year,
right.
That we need to be in place for education, protection, and then more proactive measures.
Okay,
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Bylaws update. The bylaws that we approved at this board have been submitted to council for their review.
They went to the attorneys, back to us. Now they go to community engagement. Then they go to city council.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're on their way.
They are.
They're going to get there.
No substantial changes. So.
Okay. Work plan committee liaison. No, sorry, Ian.
Hey, so I want to thank Steve, Jeff, Daniel, Doug, and Stephen for joining this year's work plan committee. I will be sending out a when to meet or something like that in the next week so we can have our initial meeting, ideally by the end of this month. And then we will take the draft priorities from Stephen in the Parks Department and send that to the standing committee chairs so that they can talk about those at their April meetings. And from there, our goal is to have this done by our retreat in May so that if there's any last discussions or changes, we can make them there and present for approval in June.
All right. Awesome. Any questions for Ian? No? All right. Liaison reports for community engagement. Anybody? I know you guys, obviously Forestville has kind of flown.
I think Ian and I had a very good experience with the CAG for Forestville. It was the first one, well, it wasn't the first one actually I've been on, but it was the first one organized like it is. A very good, interesting group. I always enjoy the people and their inputs. And again, Ian did a great job on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Great job to you guys. Thank you for leading them and providing guidance. And then chair report. Really, the only thing I was going to say, Stephen already mentioned that we're having our board retreat. It's May 29th and 30th. As Ian said, we're going to be able to kind of go over the work plan. There's also several subjects that Stephen just mentioned. So just start thinking about questions that you have for staff, times where maybe you wanted a more in-depth discussion on something and you didn't want to do it here on a Thursday night. It's easier to do it on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning. And also start thinking about other passion projects. We're going to be at Biltmore Hills, so think about Biltmore Hills, where you're going to get a chance to put your eyes on the courts and the site if you haven't already. So you can be thinking about that. And then I just want to congratulate again Kate and the entire sustainability committee. This was obviously a huge project that came out of the board. It was something that was on our work plan last year, and it's something that I think is just a big feather in our cap. So congratulations. That's it. If there's nothing else from anybody else on the board. Oh, Kate, go ahead.
And thank you for that. I had a different topic, though. As you know, I spend a huge amount of time at the park right near me, Windermere Beaver Dam. And kids, which is really, it's wonderful to see so many children out, but so many children are out now on much heavier bikes than they used to be on. And so in our park, they're riding on natural surface trails, and they really are having an impact. And I understand from talking to staff that there's no policies specifically about bikes, which, if they weren't so heavy, wouldn't be a problem. But I was wondering whether this might be an issue in other parks where it would make sense to have some kind of discussion about whether there should be any policies about it. If it's only in our park, it's not, that's a, one, but if it's a broader issue with heavier bike use on trails.
The feedback that I get is more about e-bikes on greenways and speed. I have not heard, and those are the heavy ones. The smaller bikes, actually bikes are lighter now, but when you get an e-bike, they are bigger and bigger tires.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's on our trails now.
Oh, the e-bikes. Okay, yeah. I don't know. I could bring back and talk with Ken, like if Forest Ridge or others are having issues. It's mostly speed. Have not heard so much about wear and tear, but there are discussions about these one-wheelers that people are using and so forth. So, but not an overwhelming issue that I am aware of. Yep.
It's funny that you bring that up because locally, in our park, Eastgate, doesn't have trails. I mean, we're not connected to Greenway, but there's been paths worn over the years. And lately there have been issues. It's also e-bikes, but it's e-cycles, which is even another category that's, faster, heavier, and run on knobby tires. And knobby tires do stuff. I mean, they're not great for it. and there's actually been an issue with building jumps. Personally, I don't think it's a big deal. I walk through there every day, but I can understand how some people would be concerned about it. So it's probably a growing issue, because we just saw this week the issue came up in Wake Forest with street takeovers. We actually saw in our neighborhood it was about 8 on a combination of e-bikes and e-cycles that, running down the street wide, doing tricks, popping wheelies and stuff like that. And it's sort of beyond the kind of thing you did when you had your BMX running around. So I think it's an issue that is probably evolving, and RBD is obviously aware of it. But 10 kids on e-cycles running down the street are about as easy to catch as a wild boar. I mean, it's just they're there and then they're gone. So it probably is a growing issue.
Yeah, I've definitely in the last 4 years, I mean, the number of bikes and these heavier bikes, and I don't know the difference between an e-bike and an e-cycle. I need to educate myself, but it definitely more use. One other thing to say is that this is sort of amusing, is that because the reason I'm down there all the time is because I'm doing invasive removal, which has made a lot of the areas of the park that were not very inviting before very inviting. So there are lots of them going places they never went before, which in some ways is so nice to see kids in the creek and whatever. But anyway.
So what you're saying is that this is your fault.
It's my fault.
Sorry, can I?
Go ahead, Daniel.
I know. Sorry.
We should have given you a
This
mic.
is a thing that comes up in the Greenway Committee kind of every 3 to 6 months and obviously there's people that know way more about it in the room than I do, but part of the challenge that you alluded to is like there's so many different classifications of the e-bikes, and it doesn't seem like there's anyone nationally that's figured out a great way to regulate them. And then from the parks perspective, Stephen probably knows the technical terms better than I do, but our sort of Greenway speed limits are advisory. They're not, we don't have RPD has the power to enforce things, but the Parks Department doesn't. Is that a fair?
Yeah, that's correct.
So that makes it a challenge.
It does. The other is that we're now seeing e-bikes without pedals. Yeah. And they are technically not a bicycle. So that is where RPD is trying to enforce, to say you have to have a pedal for it to be a cycle, because some they sell now do not have them. They just have like little foot pads. To me, that's a motorcycle. But there's different classes.
Yeah, but it does seem like a thing that we are obviously not the only city dealing with this.
Yep.
Probably to help staff. That could be a value add of us to like go figure out what cities are doing a good job of doing that, which I'm happy to commit to putting some research into that.
It is e-bikes on Greenway trails is a national thing. And interesting, some embrace it. Boulder, they're like, bring more e-bikes because they don't want cars on the road. And then there are others that are very much trying to, not really speed bumps, but ways in which you can mitigate long stretches and so forth. So that could be through like the design process. We always encourage, like this way we do campaigns in the spring because more people get out if they got their bikes out, and more runners are out, and we see user conflicts. So,
yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I know Charles knows this, but I was over in Mount Hope last weekend, and the trees we planted 3 years ago are all doing well, looking good.
All right, and last thing, just remember what Shashin mentioned, the bond status project visit. So if you want to go down to Dix Park next week, it's a week from today, 4:30 to 7:30. And with that, meeting adjourned.